So this is the bottom of the bamboo, the rhizomes that are growing down into the ground. And so we're just getting ready to find the piece that we're going to cut, and we want to know where we're taking that from. And we want to take it from the bottom part of the bamboo. Let's get this turned around. So again, we have the ledge here, so we know this is the top, and you can see here the growth nodes happening. And this is not ideal for making a water pipe out of, because this is a potential weak spot that can potentially crack. So we're always harvesting from below this. This piece has been curing since 9/17/2013. It's now middle of December 2016. So the best way to cut the bamboo that I've found is to tape where we're going to cut before we cut it. Electrical wire works good. Just going to cut a little bit off there. We're going to put a tension on the tape. That's what we're trying to do with that tape, is to hold it together tight so that when the blade goes through it, it doesn't kick out any splinters. And then we're going to come down here and we're going to tape where our bottom would be, which is about 1.25 inches below the node. We're going to put a nice stretch on that. Alright, now it's ready to cut. I like to use a thin piece of wood to lift the curvier pieces of bamboo up off of the deck of the saw. Especially the ones that here at the end where it can be quite radical, the shape of it. So we visually inspect, and we're going to turn the bamboo until we see it running parallel to this lower deck. We're looking, if you come and look directly at it, we don't want the piece like this. We don't want it like this. We want it directly parallel. And then if you come over here and look straight down, we're going to look from here down to here, and we're going to have to visually keep this straight. So here is what we don't want, here's what we don't want. You hold those two planes firmly square, bracing onto the saw itself. We're going to see where we are right in the middle of the tape. We're using an aluminum saw blade here. Now if you look at the rake on those teeth, they're actually a -1 or 2 degree. Okay, so that's going to minimize splintering on the back end. Alright, let's put our safety glasses on and our dust mask. So I'm going to have to hold the end of the bamboo myself because my helper's not here. I don't recommend trying this without a helper. Let's turn that around and cut the top. Now we can pull that tape off. Alright, let's get to work cleaning it up. Alright, let's use the Dremel here and the wire brush and clean out the bottom. The next thing we want to do is clean all this paper type stuff off that's at each node. And I like to use this fine bristled wire brush. So we're just going to use this corner edge and very carefully, very softly clean off that paper. Always use eye protection and lung protection. There we go. So this jig I designed for drilling the bamboo has a DeWalt plunge router as the mill head. And so we just position the bamboo in there, and then we plunge down and we get our proper depth. Visually, it's going to be different on each piece. It's going to be visually executed each time. So we have to be paying very sharp attention during this part. This is one of the most critical parts of the whole process. The hole needs to be drilled perfectly. The bamboo does things like flex, and if there's a stress point in the bamboo, a lot of times that will cause the hole to foul. And by foul, we mean that this router head that's doing somewhere around 10,000 RPMs, that's fully penetrated the bamboo upwards of 2 inches. The bamboo will suddenly move, and it will be this incredible almost explosion that happens here that causes you to jump back, and you're left with a piece of bamboo that's ruined, and certainly some wear and tear on the jig here. So the jig has just been put together out of different plywoods. If you want to come in here, we can see that there are 2 blocks secured here. Now what that does is that allows for this bamboo to be held. Any size of circle will go in there and become tight at a different point. And then this bar clamp here is able to slide up and brace in a 3rd point. So what we end up with on the jig is 3 points of contact at the base. And then holding the bamboo on the top is this heavy-duty spring clamp. We have this tool that was made specifically of that taper there is the same there. So we're drilling out precisely that 18.8 millimeter industry standard scientific ground joint. Now we're going to look for where the hole will be drilled. Typically we can look for this mark here. If you notice, there's a V, and this comes from when the paper that was wrapped around the bamboo while it was growing has fallen off. It's left that V mark. I like to put the hole about a little less than 1/3 of the way up from the node. So I hold that spot in my mind's eye, and as I place it in the jig, I'm keeping this directly down. So that tells me that I'm drilling directly on the other side. And as I place it into the jig, I'm imagining where this comes down to hit. Looks like just a little bit more, little down, and then we bring this up to tighten that. Now we don't want to do it too hard, we don't want to over tighten it, but we do want to make sure that it doesn't move. One of the tougher holes that you can drill in any piece of wood. We're going to check our fit here. Looks great. So we're just going to take a little piece of sandpaper and soften that and make sure that we don't have any splinters. And we still have a perfect edge there. So there's 2 lines that I've drawn here that are parallel to this plane here. So we put the bamboo on there, and then we have to balance out between these 2 sides one way so we're perfectly level. And then we turn it 90 degrees so that the hole is this way, and we do the same thing. I have to wait for it to cool now before I can put it back over here, because that's what burns it. We're sanding that edge, just softening it just a hair. And we want to do the same thing on this inner edge. Alright, that feels great. We're going to clean this area up just a little bit. We've got this Dremel bit that we're going to use. So we've got another router mounted under here. And we'll use it to put the mouthpiece on. We're going to grip the bamboo firmly at the base. We're going to rotate it around counterclockwise on the outside and clockwise on the inside. Here we go. So we've got a rough, rounded edge there. Now we're going to take it over to the Guinevere and get it really shaped. We have an inflatable bladder. We have the same thing here for round. We have a sander. And we have a pump. This is sandpaper cleaner. So I'm going to show you now what I'm working. So I'm working on just softening this corner here. Here we go a little more. Now we're going to go all the way around. So see where I'm rubbing on that edge? So as we go around. Once we've got our rough shape, we're going to take the rough sandpaper off and we're going to put a softer one. This is going to be more of a polisher. Perfect. So we're going to drill the membrane in here. So we need a spade bit smaller than the diameter. Okay, so we don't want to mar it. And then we're going to use an extension. We're going to put that in our drill. Okay, and then we're going to pull out very slowly. Okay, now we're going to sand it. This is his drum sander. Okay, I'm going to inspect it. Okay, so we need to sand it a little more. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to blow all that dust out of there. We've got a air nozzle outfitted with a long 1/4 inch brake line. Right there at the end, it's got a 90-degree bend, and that little teeny hole there is where all the pressure will come out. And so we're going to use that to go down in the bamboo and spray out all that dust. The next step is we're going to wet these areas we've sanded. We get it nice and moist, and what that's going to do is that's going to cause some of those fibers to swell. And so what was just feeling glassy smooth, once that dries, it will have a slight roughness to it. And then we'll go ahead and sand that again. And that's going to make for a much finer overall finish when it comes to oiling. There it is. You can already feel that fuzz. We're going to use this glass countertop as a way to bring this to a finer polish. First we'll use a 220 sandpaper, and then we'll follow that up with the 320 sandpaper. We hold the sandpaper taut, and we start with small circles. Any imperfections that may be on there from the mechanical sander, this is going to sand out. So we're looking to polish here. Move it around on the sandpaper. Moving it around in our hands. Making sure that we're going to get a nice, perfect polished bottom. And once we're able to move through there without any chatter or resistance, then we can move to the 320. Feeling good. Smooth as glass. We're going to wet that one more time. Give it one more chance to swell up. We're going to polish that top again as well. We're looking for any imperfections. We're not seeing many. And now we'll go to the inside. Remember to move your sandpaper around. It gets buildup on it, and we want to rotate that to a clean part of sandpaper. Again, rotating. Perfectly smooth. We never want to rely on the temperature of the oven. We want to use an actual thermometer to monitor the temperature. Place the bamboo in the center rack. We'll set the thermometer down here so we can monitor that. And we're going to start the temperature as low as the oven will go. And then we want to slowly allow the bamboo to come up to temperature. It's going to take about an hour. And we're going to raise it 15 degrees every hour for the next 4 hours until we reach 230 degrees. That's the same temperature that we use in candy making to make caramel. So we're going to be caramelizing the bamboo, caramelizing the sugars within the bamboo. Alright, we'll be back in an hour. Let's bump that temperature up. Alright, another 15 degrees. Here we go, 15 more. Okay, now it's taken us 4 hours to get up to temperature, and now we're there at 230 degrees. And we're going to allow the bamboo to cook for about an hour at 230 degrees. Okay, so the bamboo's been cooking for an hour at 230. We're going to go ahead and turn it off now. Okay, so the bamboo is cooled down. It's time to take it out and get it sealed. So the next step is to seal this dry bamboo. We're going to seal it at the end grain, here on the bottom, on the hole, as well as on the top. We're going to seal that with equal parts of limonene, which is essential oil from the orange peel, and we're going to mix that with pure tung oil, which is a natural waterproofing oil from the tung tree in China. We've got a little bit of that mixed up here. We'll use a paintbrush to apply. That limonene helps the tung oil penetrate. Tung oil is very thick on its own, and that limonene, which is a natural solvent, cuts it down, allows it to penetrate the bamboo, and it also does an amazing job keeping bugs away. Any of the wood-boring beetles, termites, powder post beetle, they don't want to have anything to do with that limonene. Interesting side note is that limonene is one of the terpenes found in marijuana as well. Turn it over and do the bottom. And we're going to allow this oil to soak in and penetrate into the bamboo. And we're going to allow that to sit overnight. I want to make sure and get any of that grain that's going to be able to absorb oil. We'll also put a little on this growth node. Okay. Always make sure to rinse your brush. And we use the limonene as the solvent to clean our brush. That's going to evaporate on you very fast, so we'll keep the lids on it. We're going to allow that bamboo to sit for about an hour before we wipe any of the excess oil off of the outside. Okay, we're back. It's been about an hour, and as you can see, that oil has absorbed into that end grain area. I'm going to wipe any of the excess off the outside. Now we're going to allow that to sit for 24 hours before we come back and put another coat. Okay, so we're back. We're going to do the same thing we did yesterday. We're going to do another layer of the limonene and tung oil mixture. Now what this is going to do is going to seal the bamboo, and what that's going to do is going to keep moisture in or out. So if there was any moisture in here, which there's not, as we just cooked all the moisture out, essentially it's going to seal up these pores in the wood, which is going to slow down the rate of exchange of humidity. So whether you're in a humid area or a dry area, this sealing of the pores of the bamboo allows the bamboo to acclimate. And so what that does is allows the natural movement of the bamboo. There's one thing that's for sure, wood moves. And there's nothing we can do to stop it, but what we can do is slow it down. And as it's slowed down, then the fibers can slowly move and resist cracking. If we weren't to seal this up, we might experience some cracking. Okay, it's been about an hour. So we're going to wipe down any excess oil that's on the outside of the bamboo. As you can see, the oil on the outside doesn't absorb in. The outside of the bamboo is almost like an enamel. And so we don't have to worry about sealing that nearly as much as we do the end grain. We'll let that cure for 24 hours and then we'll be back to polish the outside. Okay, the next step is going to be to measure the downstem length as well as sign and date it. We're going to use a pyrographer, which is the fancy name for a wood burning pen, to inscribe that information on the bottom. Each BooTube has a custom cut downstem, and that is based on the diameter of the bamboo. So we have a jig that we use, the downstem in there, and we can see where this widest point at the taper of the downstem is hitting the bamboo. That's where we'll be measuring from. We have a jig here with our 1/8 inch increments marked on there. Alright, and as we get that in as far as it'll go, we can see that it's the line between 3 and 5, so that's going to be a 4. Now we're going to put those prayers, the one of unconditional love, of aloha. As I'm writing this, I'm thinking of love. And of course, to use this peace pipe in a conscious manner. And that's going to mean something different to each of us differently, depending on where we are on the path. It's very important to control your breathing. Then I'd like to sign it. If you Google that name, Bohawks, you can find out more. Looks great. Next we're going to tape up the hole before we wax. Before we wax, we want to do the first step of the 3-step polishing. And the first step is to use the Maui Wowie Magic Salve, which is 2-to-1 coconut oil to beeswax. And we're going to put a generous amount of that on the exterior of the tube. You can just use your hand to rub that in. We'll do the other side. And next we're going to take a fine steel wool and really polish that oil and beeswax into the bamboo. We're going to use a 00, a very fine steel wool. And we're going to be quite aggressive in polishing that. We're going with the grain of the bamboo. Lengthwise. Be careful not to go back and forth over the node here. This will really tear up your steel wool if you do. So we're just going to go between the nodal points. Okay, and then we'll wipe that down. And we're going to let that sit overnight. We're back for the next step of the 3-part polishing, and that's going to be the limonene and tung oil mixture on top of the coconut oil and beeswax. This is going to give us a glossy finish, a little bit of a glossy finish on the outside of the bamboo. And we'll wipe this down, and then it will sit for 24 hours. That tung oil will go off, much like concrete does or epoxy. And you can build this layer up as many times as you want. Just like painting a car, you can put as many clear coats as you want. The more clear coats that are on it, the deeper the gloss and shine. So if you want your bamboo shinier, then you can repeat the tung oil step as many times as you want. Just make sure that you allow 24 hours to dry between each coat. Here's a little trick to not leave fingerprints, because these fingerprints will stick. Use 2 towels, one on each hand. We're just going to lightly wipe that tung oil. And then as this will dry overnight, we'll come back tomorrow and we'll be ready for our next step. So we're back and the tung oil is dried. And now we're on to our final step of the polishing, which is the salve, again on top. So we're sandwiching that tung oil between 2 layers of the salve. And then we'll wipe that down, and once that dries, she'll have that beautiful boot tube finish. We're finally on to this waxing of the inside. Now it's very important that we have the correct temperature of our wax. And again, we're going to use that same thermometer that we used in the oven to make sure that we have exact temperature. So our temperature is right there at 190 to 200 degrees. The perfect temperature for pouring in the bamboo. We want to fill it most of the way up. We have to give it a little pat. There's an air bubble there, we can see. So as it's here, we give it a tap. And then we turn it. Allows that bubble to escape, and we give it another tap. And then we dump it out as we rotate. It's going to put a nice even layer of beeswax. Set that straight down. Now that beeswax is going to melt down in the bottom and form a small pool of hot wax. And we want to do something with that wax. We want to coat the inside of the bamboo again. And so we're going to hold it on a 45-degree angle and rotate. And that's going to thicken that beeswax in on the bottom. I'm going to peek in here and see how we're doing. We have to be paying heavy attention to the beeswax right now. We know it's cooling. And just before it cools and hardens, we want to continue to thicken that edge on the bottom. Okay, so the beeswax has gotten hard down in the bottom, so it's safe time to move it. Now while this is still soft, we're going to use our finger to scrape that beeswax off. And that can go right back in the pot. We've got a beautifully waxed boot tube. Okay, we can pull the tape off. And we can see we've got a beautiful layer of beeswax in there. The beeswax is still a little warm. We can thin out that beeswax in the hole. Again, using our X-Acto knife. To help get in there. We want just a thin, even layer of beeswax. Keep the hole clean. You can use the nail. You've got to just go by feel on the inside of the hole. It feels really good. Okay. So the next step is we're going to put a little bit of beeswax on the bottom. And that's going to serve as your maintenance kit, so that you always have extra beeswax in the bottom of your boot tube. Use our torch here. We'll do a couple things. We're going to warm the mouthpiece and give that a wipe. Beautiful. And then we're going to heat the inside just a little bit. We just don't want that beeswax going to go in there and touch cold bamboo, warm bamboo. One dollop will do ya. Cap it with our finger and let go. Careful not to spill over the edge. And then we'll stand that up and allow that to cool. Okay, it looks like the beeswax has had a chance to dry. The next step is going to be installing the down stem. So if you remember, we had a number 4, and so we've got our number 4 down stem here. It's already been cut. The first thing we're going to do before we install it is to warm the down stem. And so we'll do that quickly with a torch. You can use a Bic lighter at home. Take about 3 seconds in front of the Bic lighter. We want to hold that in the hand and make sure it's not too hot, but warm. And then we put that in, and we allow that warm glass just to soften that beeswax just a little bit. And now we're going to go ahead and put pressure down and in. And give it a little wiggle back and forth. Looks like we have a perfect fit. We want to make sure that the down stem is touching the bamboo. Now, all we've got to do is install the tag. We use a piece of beeline here, which I prefer over the butane. On the back of your card will tell you care instructions, which are to simply empty the water after each use. Each BooTube piece pipe comes with the Maui Wowie Magic Salve, which is not only to protect and polish your BooTube, but it also soothes dry lips, hands, irritated skin, sore muscles, bug bites, and even minor cuts and burns. Made from organic coconut oil, natural beeswax, and pure aloha.